doing this.
Yes.
Good morning, and thank you again for tuning in for another episode of Stroke Survivor Interviews on Stroke Warrior Radio. My guest today is Dominic Cifuni. Good morning, Dom. How are you?
Hey, Ralph. Happy to be here. Doing very well.
Good. Happy New Year, too.
Happy New Year.
All right, I'll get right to it then. When did your stroke occur?
Yes, so going back into July of 2007, I had a brain AVM rupture on the was the right side of my brain, so it affected my entire left side. I had paralysis, I had some short-term memory loss, as well as um some limited mobility and some other things with my left hand as well.
Did you immediately realize that something was wrong? Did you know the signs of stroke at all?
No, no, I had no idea. I should have went into that. Sorry. I was only 11 years old at the time in July '07, and we
Oh,
were
wow.
actually going out on a trip with my both my parents out to San Francisco, California. And I was getting headaches around that time, like really bad migraines. The morning of our flight, I actually got nauseous. I threw up. I think it was right before we got on the airplane, and that was one of the symptoms, of course, right, of an upcoming stroke probably, or something like that, brain injury. And we ended up landing in California, checked into our hotel, everything. We went for a walk, and I just passed out on the side of the Fisherman's Wharf, actually, out in San Francisco.
Oh my gosh.
Hmm.
So they weren't obviously aware of the signs of stroke or brain bleed either.
No,
Um, so it was because of the AVM, it was a hemorrhagic stroke, right?
that's correct. Yeah, and actually, it's interesting. I had a physical. I played a lot of sports growing up. I'm still very involved. Now I'm coaching, but I was very involved in athletics as a younger person, adolescent. And I had a physical for football like a week or two before. And of course, everything checked out. They don't do anything like major, like scan wise or anything like that, but just a general physical. And I got a clean bill of health, and on our way. And I think it was literally a week before our trip that happened.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Hmm.
Um, well, what do you remember? I mean, being 11 years old, I mean, that must be shocking as heck.
Absolutely.
Do you remember the limitations you had?
Yeah, some of them I'm still dealing with and overcoming today, but initially it was, like I said, paralysis on my left side, so I had to relearn how to walk. Use like my left hand and fingers, things like that. Thankfully, I'm a righty naturally, so I was still able,
Yeah.
to write, and my dominant side was protected, thankfully. But like little things like typing on the computer, or anything you have to use two hands for, that was a bit of a struggle in the beginning. And like I said, the short-term memory, I remember them asking me. I worked with a speech therapist, both in California, and when I came back, I did rehab in New York, where I'm from too. And it was like, what did you have for breakfast? And it would it would take me like a minute or two just to remember, a few hours before. So that short-term memory, thankfully, it's come back over time, but that was, a struggle in the beginning as well.
How, how long were you going once, twice, three times a week to rehab? I mean, what kind of ordeal was that for an 11-year-old?
Yeah, so actually, I said out in California, it was only supposed to be, I think, a 7-day trip. We ended up being out there for about 2 months or so. It was in the summertime, so it
Oh
was
my
in between
gosh.
for me fifth and sixth grade, and I think it was like end of June, probably beginning of July, up until about the end of August, maybe like 7, 8 weeks out there. I was in an ICU for about, I think, a month, maybe about 3, 4 weeks in San Francisco, and then I did about 2 months in inpatient at Blythedale Children's Hospital, very good facility over here in Westchester County. And then I did after the 2 months inpatient, I finished the year, and then they actually have a school there in the Blythedale rehab program. So I was able to finish sixth grade, keep up with my studies. I did a full year, the outpatient. They bused me back and forth over the bridge. I'm in Rockland County, so it's only about
Okay.
25 minutes, 30 minutes tops. and I did that for about 10 minutes. I finished 6th grade, and then from there I did outpatient at a local rehab hospital, Helen Hayes. Maybe about 15 minutes from me.
Because of the AVM, did you have to go through any surgery at the time?
Yes, so I believe when I was out in San Francisco, it was a shunt they had
Okay.
for me, and then when I came back, I had met with the neurosurgeon at in Columbia Hospital, and I actually had I had an angiogram done, just to see how things were, like a test, and then I had the gamma knife. I'm blanking out on it, the gamma knife
That's all right.
radiation procedure. Yeah,
Oh,
so that was a little extensive. I was maybe about I want to say like 12, 13 when I got that. So I was fairly young too. And then I
wow.
went back in, they did another scan maybe around like senior year of high school, and then that's when he said, they got everything. Everything was, taken care of. So yeah,
Wow.
all at a young age for sure.
You had to go through it for a whole nother 10 years.
There was a period of time, that's what they said, to get a better idea of if they had, gotten everything. They didn't want to do it too soon. So they said, we'll wait. And they went back in. That was still at Columbia. I went back to for the angiogram, and that's when they gave me like the clean bill of health. So at that point it was just a matter of, rehabbing as best I could, and, trying to get back to full strength, where I was beforehand.
Are you still attending therapies at all, or do you do it all on your own?
No, everything's pretty much on my own. They've given me like stretches to do over the years. I try to keep up with them as best I can, but I don't always do 'em. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that I was able to transition back into my local middle school, actually, the junior high school in 7th grade, and then I got back into a few of the sports that I love, thankfully, which kept me engaged and everything, and involved in my school and community, things like that. In 8th grade, I think it was, up until I graduated high school and beyond. And I've been an avid weightlifter. I like going on like jogs, hiking, things like that. So I keep active in that regard too.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
How long did the limitations last? You mentioned before you still have some issues. I mean, what's going on?
Yeah, like sometimes my left side was my left side, my left hand, my fingers will like cramp up at times. I used to like my arm used to cramp up too, but it's gotten, like I said, I think over time, the muscles, and I guess the brain firing signals and things like that, that's subsided a lot. But like I said, sometimes I will cramp up, and I sometimes walk with a slight limp as well. So
Yeah.
but those
I,
are, two minor symptoms or signs from what I did have back then. So
were you confined to a wheelchair? Did they get you in a walker right away, or a cane? How'd that
yeah,
work
yeah.
for you?
Well, pretty much the full cycle for me. So like I said, out in California, they had amazing equipment out there. They I think it was like walking bars, they considered it. And you go hand over hand just with that. But I was confined to a wheelchair out there. Coming back here to Blythedale Children's Hospital in New York, I was in a wheelchair. Then I was able to transition to a walker, then to a cane. I think it had 4 legs on it, to one with one leg, and then transition to a brace. I had a long leg brace, and then they
Oh,
cut it about halfway, and then into nothing at all. So
cool. How long
but
did
that
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 take
was a
for you?
long process, though. I'd say it was probably like 2 or 3 years between all that, with the wheelchair and to the leg brace eventually.
Okay. And when did
Yep.
you get off independent from any medical devices?
The last brace I had was probably freshman, sophomore year of high school, I would say.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So about Um, 4 years, 3, 4 years.
Okay. That's not bad.
Mhm.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
Um, in hindsight, I mean, thinking about an 11-year-old, I'm sure that with the cognitive issues as well, what did you think of your initial recovery experience and quality care?
Um, Yeah, so absolutely, like, that wasn't an experience that I thought I was gonna have, going into my first year of middle school back then. But yeah, everything I received from out in California, those, 2 months, which I know were a lot of stress on my family as well and everything like that. And even the doctors were like, wow, you're too young for this. They were like amazed, at seeing me. People, they were normally used to working with and things like that. Obviously we're much older, but I thought the care from being out there in San Francisco for that short period of time, all the way, from Blythedale out in Westchester, I was very grateful for the opportunity to go to school, do my rehab. The time I was there, everyone was fantastic, and I definitely wouldn't be where I am without all the support. Where every place I've been, so I'm very grateful for that.
Oh, and did you continue outpatient? You continued outpatient surgery until you were a senior in high school, you said?
Outpatient therapy it was. I did OT and PT, and I
Okay.
think my last surgery, like I said, the angiogram was like the last scan just to make sure there was the AVM was gone, that it was they had shrank it in surgery and that it was wouldn't be an issue anymore. I think I want to say a junior or senior in high school.
Okay. I imagine now, and again, in hindsight, what insights do you have now that you wish you would have had as a child?
Um, yeah, I mean, even just someone like having someone to talk to that went through the experience. That's like a lot of the work I do. I was glad, I had reached out to you. I've worked with Greg Graham, and I've spoken with
Yes.
him. He's amazing, a superhero. Does wonderful work. And just being an advocate, I wish I had someone to listen to and kind of look up to. I had a few people in the hospital and like doctors and things, and they would give, pointers and advice, but it's like someone that went through, what we went through, that would have helped tremendously as well.
Yeah, I found once I met other stroke survivors, my recovery started to become better,
Absolutely.
especially the mental health part. I mean, I can't imagine going through that as a child,
Hmm.
going through that mental health. Did they get you involved in any counseling or anything?
I had at Blythedale over in Westchester, there was like a psychologist I would speak to probably about once a week, I would say twice a week. And we would just like talk about my recovery and things like that, because it was traumatic, of course, being so young and not really thinking anything about it to you're dealing with this as, like you said, a young adolescent, which is a weird age for anybody, right? You're like pre-puberty and everything else. But
Yeah, right.
so I was fortunate to speak to somebody there. But I would say after that, I never really kept going with the with therapy or anything like that. Just
Yeah.
the occupational and physical therapy.
You said you've become more of an advocate. Tell me about um, some of the most significant changes that having a stroke as a child made in your adult life.
Um, so for me, like, obviously being very involved in sports, my dad coached football when I was growing up. I'm the youngest of six. All of them were involved in, like interscholastic activities, things like that. So I was always very big into football. And, obviously when the doctor told me that, he's like, well, Dom, you're not going to play football anymore. That really hurt me. But fortunately, I was able to get involved in the coaching realm, and thankfully, I'm still coaching today. I just finished a year. I was at St. Thomas Aquinas. It's a local college up here in New York. So I was able, to kind of change the narrative a bit. I knew I wasn't going to be an athlete, so okay, I want to still be involved in sports. What's the next course of action? That's when I went into coaching, and I was able to wrestle in high school. Thankfully, wrestling's a big sport for me too. And right now, I'm currently coaching at a local high school over here. I'm in Ramapo.
Wonderful. Yeah, I was
Hmm.
football and wrestling as well. So
Okay.
yeah, oh man, I loved. And actually, St. Thomas Aquinas in Edison, New Jersey, was our rival. I mean, nasty
Oh, geez.
rivalry in football and wrestling and everything. It was
Yeah,
funny.
yeah. Go figure.
So anyway, um, recovery. I mean, it's hard to ask some of these questions because you've gone from being a child stroke warrior to being an adult stroke warrior and advocate. Um,
Mm.
as you've learned over the years, it encompasses both physical and mental aspects in recovery. How's your has your you made any shift on mental health specifically?
Um, well, definitely in terms of like having a positive mindset and really like pushing myself to, to have that. Like in the beginning, I was mostly focused on like what I can't do and like, all the negatives and things like that. But now, I'd say, and really over since I probably went away to college, some time ago, maybe about 7, 8 years ago, I really like flipped the switch and like, okay, we're gonna focus on what we can do. Really reinforcing that positive mindset. I had a mentor in high school, and he always said that, like, the glass is half full, you gotta, be positive and keep your sense of faith, things like that. So that's really helped me over the time, those kind of things.
Yeah. Did you do you realize or did you have any do you go through any mental anguish now because of it, or that when you changed it back then it's helped keep you on a level playing field?
Yeah, I mean, I think just flipping that switch, like naturally getting back into sports, I was quite the competitor. As a young kid, like I mentioned, I was only 11 years old, but I got involved in the sport of wrestling when I was 5, and I was winning championships, and they were talking about pulling me up to the high school program when I was in middle school, things like that. So having those like high hopes and aspirations to, I was still able to compete, which is great, and I was very fortunate to do that. I know many survivors that weren't able to do that, right, weren't able to transition back into somewhat of a normal life or the life they had before stroke, I guess you could say. But I was grateful for those opportunities. They were limited, but having the opportunity to compete in that, and then like I said, going back into coaching, I was very grateful for too.
How would you describe your recovery today?
I would say people have asked me that too. On the one interview I did with Greg, somebody had commented on that. I would say based on like all the therapies and everything like that, I'm probably about, I would say like 90%. Like I said, my hand still cramps up from time to time. People will notice I still walk with a slight limp. Even the kids when we're in practice wrestling, when I get a little tired too, there's like when the fatigue sets in,
Oh
my
yeah.
my arm will cramp up a little bit and things like that. And some of my student athletes will be like, "Coach, like, is everything all right?" And it was funny in the beginning. I was a little like hesitant because I wanted to get to know them more before I had spoken to them about my AVM, my aneurysm, things like that. And after he said that, I'm like, you know what? I think now's the time. So I sat the whole team down and I self-advocated. I told them like, "Hey, this is, what it is, and it's not a disability, it's something I use, it's kind of something that, I went through, but I've overcome it, and it's something you may notice, but everything's okay." So, just trying to make people more aware of the signs and symptoms, things like that.
Yeah. Can you describe what a typical day looks like for you now?
Yes. So I'm currently teaching. I'm a reading specialist. Actually, I got my master's in literacy. At a Sorry, it's SUNY New Paltz. Actually, I got my master's online. I'm a reading specialist at a local middle school here. It's about, I would say, 20 minutes away. It's kind of on the border of Jersey and New York. And so you normally, wake up in the morning. I drive to school. We have a later start, so I don't start till 9 o'clock. We're about 9 to 3:40. I teach 5 subjects to seventh and eighth grade middle school, and there's a big growing population around here too of ENL students, so English as a new language. So
Right.
it's a challenge, but I love it. The kids we work with are wonderful, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity. I have amazing colleagues. So again, I'm teaching them. Some of them are basic reading skills, but others of them, we do like higher comprehension type skills. So I'll work with them throughout the day, and then from there. we have wrestling practice after school at the high school. So that's about a 15-20 minute drive for me after my day's done with school. Most of the teachers are heading home or complaining about their day. And I'm like, well, I still have another 2.5, 3 hour practice to get to, so trying to be positive and optimistic. So then I drive over there. I'll get a workout in with those guys. We'll have a practice, and that'll usually go till about um they actually take a bus, a lot of them, so I'll hang around with them till about 6 o'clock. And then I'll come home and really just enjoy dinner and and probably throw on a TV show, or just, hang out with my family or my girlfriend as well.
Yeah. One of the things I still struggle with, I'm 9 years post-stroke. One
Mhm.
of the things I still struggle with, and part of it, you've probably noticed it in our correspondence, is my follow-up, my organization, those kind of things. It's I was so good at it before my stroke, but now I still get the cognitive issues.
Cognitive
Do you
piece, yeah,
still
yeah.
get that kind of stuff happen to you? I imagine with the reading for teaching, for example, that is probably some of the best thing to help your own cognitive issues.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, early on, like I said, when especially having the short term, my aneurysm affected the right side. So that was the short term, and, memory, and there was cognitive pieces as well. But, that was definitely a challenge in the beginning, but working with like speech therapists and things like that, they had given me tips and things like that too. So those are strategies I'm using with my students, things that I learned, throughout my therapies early on as well. But, really, like, breaking things down into, like, the smallest, pieces and things, and I give them strategies sometimes. I tell them, like, I still use this strategy, and, I'm probably twice as old as most of them, so things like that, trying to just be more relatable and, building the rapport with the students as well.
Yeah, I kind of always had the opinion too that after my stroke, I was now a toddler. I had to relearn stuff as if I were a toddler.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yes.
I'm impressed that you use that in your teaching as well.
Mhm.
Uh, what's the best part of your day now?
Currently, I would say the wrestling. Like I said, something I loved growing up, and just being there. And a lot of the kid, we actually had a lot of kids sign up. They said I think it was the most they've had in a long. I had about 60 kids sign up for the sport, so it was tremendous. Of course, not everybody stuck around, but we're about 38 to 40 kids consistently right now, and they're competing. And I told them if they stick with it, you learn so much about yourself. And wrestling's great because it's an individual sport, but it's also, you're working together with your team. So, you get as much, I told them that you get as much out of it as what you put into it, similar to like us and, going to therapy and things like that, or like, even the
Exactly,
gym, things like that too. So that's
exactly.
the favorite part of my day right now.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there because I was lucky enough. I did prior to stroke. I coached high school wrestling and I did some assistant coaching in football and stuff like that. But after my stroke, I didn't do much till I moved up Bend, Oregon, where three of my grandchildren live. And I'd go out there on my cane and help coach softball with my granddaughter,
Sure.
and it was like, what's wrong with you? So you get to explain it just like you said,
Of course.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
doing stuff I used to do made a big difference in me recovering.
Yeah.
It may
Yeah.
not have looked pretty at all, but it got better and better. So
Hmm.
that
And
coaching
that's
was,
good for your mental health too, of course.
oh my God, yes. Oh my God,
Hmm.
yes. Um, do you go through a bunch of any stroke related challenges now? And how do you cope with those?
Um, Like I said, it definitely improved a lot since over the time, the therapies and things like that. But like I said, my hand will still cramp up from time to time. I still have the slight limp. But I'm able to do a lot of things. Initially, I didn't think I would be able to do. Like I drive a car. I have multiple jobs. I also work for my local town recreation program. I run a summer camp here in
Oh
in
wow.
uh, Clarkstown, and I used to work with like seniors, things like that too. So being able to have jobs, I didn't think I wasn't sure what I'd be able to do after stroke. That was one of the things that, would bug me a little bit. Seeing overlooking and thinking about all the things I couldn't do. I wasn't really focused on what I could do at that point.
Do you think that your stroke journey has brought new rewards in your or lessons in your life?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And do you perceive yourself differently now as a person on this journey? I mean, a
Yeah.
little soul searching type question, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, initially, like I said, that was one of the things, being 11 years old, in a hospital, over in Westchester. I didn't really remember San Francisco all that much. That was like, it was really quick. I was in a
Yeah.
coma for a couple weeks as well,
Oh my
induced
gosh.
coma, and then I came out of it. And, transitioning back over here, that was one of the things I was struggling with. It was, common question was like, why me? Why did this happen to me? Even, as I get older too, I'm like, man, what, like, why did I have to deal with this? And then now I think like, why not me? Like, maybe because I can handle it, and I have handled it for quite some time. Maybe I'm the person who was supposed to go through something like this. So really
Yeah.
just, turning that mindset around, that's something that's helped me, I would say, over the last, um, it'll be 18 years actually this summer. It's so crazy to think about. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It is.
Hmm.
Um, what's your future look like as you continue your stroke recovery journey and your stroke advocacy journey?
Yeah, I definitely want to get more involved. I've been out to San Francisco. I went back actually. I want to say it was about 2, 3 years ago. It was it was in the fall. It used to be in the summer, but it was September, and I had met with Dina Chan out there. Actually, I had met the doctor that did the surgery to help me out in San Francisco back in '07. So that was, I think 15 years. So that was um, yep, 2022, like I said, going back out and seeing everybody. And, I definitely want to continue going back out there, but we're actually trying to get some things going on this side of the country, maybe in the Eastern region in New York, becoming more of an advocate for, AVM survivors as well as those who haven't survived, right? I've met quite a few people who have unfortunately lost children and, brothers and siblings, and moms and dads, things like that too. So really trying to become more of an advocate on this side. And thankfully, we've done things too in my community. We actually did a walk. We did a couple walks a few years ago. We stopped doing them after COVID, but maybe get those back going like they have out in San Francisco. We had one girl come up from Washington. We had somebody from around the Jersey Shore. It was a couple years ago. They came and they walked with us, and we went out to lunch after, so it was nice. But maybe make a bigger event. That's something Greg and I are. We were in talks about. We're working on getting some events and really building the advocacy for the East Coast of the United States.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Um, how do you envision your life a year from now?
1 year from now, I'm definitely I'll still be coaching, I'll still be teaching. Like I said, I want to increase my advocacy. And then hopefully I'd like to have I would say a higher position probably in my school district. Right now I'm a reading specialist, but I want to maybe become like a chairperson or some kind of like a literacy coach, something like that. So, go further in my position right now.
You really have changed all life goals, haven't you?
Absolutely.
That's amazing. If you could talk to another stroke survivor just leaving the hospital, and I know this is hard because you were 11, but what advice would you give them and their families?
You're talking about where I am now, right?
Yeah,
Talking to some, okay, yeah. So, I would say never lose hope. Never lose your sense of faith. Miracles can and they do happen, and definitely find a support system, as quickly as you can. That's something that'll help you, throughout the recovery process and even after as well.
yeah. One of my biggest questions I always ask everybody is, so many of us are told this is good as it's going to get, or plateaus.
Hmm.
What would you say to stroke survivors now about plateaus or people telling you this is good as it's going to get?
Yeah, so I definitely heard that for sure. But you know, I think for me it was, you can go as far as you want and as you believe, right? So really, like, putting it on yourself and challenging yourself, to do more than what people tell you you can do, right? To really push the envelope. And I would say another thing, in terms of advice is, like, I feel like I could have done more earlier on in my therapies, like like push myself a little more. So definitely challenge yourself to invest more earlier on in your rehabilitation, because I think you'll get more out of it the more you put into it early on.
Is there anything else you'd like to share that we haven't covered today?
Um, I think we covered everything. Like I said, just in terms of never losing your sense of faith, taking advantage of every opportunity, and look at the positives on your life, because there is definitely a lot of trials and tribulations and struggles, but look at all the things that you can do, and definitely use the people around you for support. And I'm, like I said, I want to be an advocate, so please reach out to me. TAF is another wonderful organization out on the West Coast in San Francisco.
What's the name of it?
Find those resources.
What's the name of that one? Taft?
TAF, Aneurysm AVM Foundation.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Mhm.
And how do people get a hold of you if they want to ask any questions, or maybe if there's something they want to share with you or whatever?
Yes. So if you guys, I was gonna say, it's my Instagram. If you want to reach out, is just my first name Dominic and my last name Cifuni. And I can send that to you too, Ralph, if you want to throw it out there. But yeah, please feel free. People have reached out to me. I've done other podcasts and things like that too, and interviews. And I'll never not answer a question. Like, I try to be very open and honest with people. What we go through is not easy, but we're here to work together. Like I said, not having really anyone to talk to early on about it. When I
Yeah.
was 11, 12 years old, to now I've met, I'd say, over a dozen people, and within the last 7, 8 years, that's really helped me tremendously, and that's 7, 8 years after my AVM as well. So
Yeah.
having that
Yeah.
support early on, I think that would have helped me out tremendously as well.
Cool. Very cool. Anything else?
No, I'm
All
all good.
right. We're good. Thank you so much, Dom. I really appreciate your time today.
Yes,
I think,
absolutely. Yep. And have a great new year, and we'll talk soon.
all right. Sounds good. I look forward to it.
Absolutely.